in the civil aviation community have much to be proud of. We have created an incredibly safe and efficient international air transportation system that keeps planes and people moving like clockwork. We have also built backup systems that render our technology virtually fail-safe. And we have contingency plans in place to deal with all kinds of unexpected events. However, we must not take this system for granted. At the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, we have been talking about the Y2K problem for some time now. We've been telling you that on 1 January 2000, it may not be business as usual. Frontline and backup systems may fail, leading to an accumulation of outages that will take longer than normal to fix. One of the Y2K worst-case scenarios involves ATS. It is conceivable that your entire airspace could be shut down. Electricity and phone lines could be out for days or weeks. Even though you may not be faced with the worst case, you more than likely will run into some Y2K problems. So you must prepare for contingencies. A well-developed contingency plan will help your ATS system weather the Y2K storm until systems return to normal. We have been telling you that it is time to review your contingency plans to make sure you're ready for the millennium change. We hope this video will help you to finally see the light.
I am pleased to see that many of you have already started to deal with the myriad of problems associated with the millennium change. By now, some of you have begun the critical testing phase of Y2K preparation. Indeed, the world aviation community is lucky to have many technical experts working on this issue. Airline operators, airport authorities, air traffic control authorities, and other international aviation organizations have come together in a global cooperative effort to deal with the millennium bug. In your planning for Y2K, you can benefit from the wealth of information they have gathered. However, despite our best efforts, it is essential that we all develop and review contingency plans for 1 January 2000 and other critical dates that may be impacted by computer failures. On these key dates, air traffic service units could be plagued by an accumulation of outages, and regular procedures for single outages will not cover all possible Y2K situations. In this video, we will review what could happen on critical dates, what is being done in various parts of the world, and what you can do to make sure your contingency plans are up to the Y2K challenge.
Developing a contingency plan is in effect the fourth step of a 5-part process recognized by government and high-tech industries worldwide as an effective strategy for dealing with the Y2K problem. ICAO and its partners in the civil aviation community have been working for some time now at promoting international awareness of Y2K issues. Hopefully by now you're well into the process of renovating and testing your equipment. In an effort to prepare for any negative consequences to international civil aviation and stay ahead of the Y2K problem, this video deals with Phase 4, contingency planning. Hey coach, good luck at the tournament and good luck on your trip. Just you and 7 very excited kids for a whole weekend. That is quite a responsibility. Hope you have a contingency plan. Let's see, a good map to get you where you're going, and candles, blankets, and road flares in case of engine trouble. I would say you've got the basics covered. Oh, and a cellular phone to keep the lines of communication open. Good idea. Looks like one of your players is getting some last-minute instructions from a worried mom. Well, Coach, I would say you're now ready for takeoff. As ICAO contracting states, you are responsible for developing and implementing your own contingency plans in the event of a disruption of normal services. The main purpose of your plan should be to preserve the availability of major air routes, and where possible, provide for alternative services. Obviously, safety is the key. ICAO guidelines recognize the fact that circumstances surrounding disruptions vary widely, and that contingency measures must be flexible. Disruptions are also likely to have an effect on services in adjacent airspaces, creating a need for international coordination. When disruptions are unforeseen, decisive initiative and quick action is often needed. In the likelihood of foreseeable disruptions, such as strikes, civil unrest, and in this case, Y2K, developments must be monitored closely by designated persons who can take follow-up action. Your contingency plan will probably contain all or some of the following elements. Establishment of a simplified route network through the airspace concerned, together with a flight level allocation scheme to ensure separation. Procedures should also be in place, allowing adjacent area control centers to establish longitudinal separation at entry points. Most importantly, plans should be in place to provide continuous air-ground and ground-ground communication. This includes backup facilities for VHF voice communications and for the Aeronautical Fixed Telecommunications Network, or AFTN, as well as direct speech links to reassign the responsibility for providing weather and navigation information. A contingency plan should include special arrangements for collecting and distributing post- and in-flight aircraft reports. You may wish to create a requirement for aircraft to maintain continuous watch on a pilot-to-pilot VHF frequency in areas where air-to-ground communication becomes uncertain, with position information and estimates broadcast on this frequency. You may need to restrict access to specified airspaces to prevent overloading of the contingency system, and you may want to make it a requirement that all operations in contingency airspaces observe instrument flight rules, including allocation of flight level schemes. All of these elements form a basic contingency plan. However, any plan is meaningless if it is not acceptable to the users of your airspace. Therefore, formal contingency agreements or detailed arrangements must be in place with all potential users of your airspace. Reviewing and updating this type of basic contingency plan is in fact only the first step in meeting the Y2K challenge. The worst-case scenario, and the scenario we all must be prepared for, would see an accumulation of outages for radar data processing, flight data processing, and support information systems.
Hey, I lost my radar. Can I have some help?
Imagine that telephone communication between ground staff, AFTN connections, and connections to military stations are all out, all at the same time. Worse still, radio communications between ground and air, and navigational and landing aid systems are also vulnerable. Any automated computer-based system could malfunction, despite our best efforts to renovate and replace equipment that is date-sensitive. Microchips are everywhere, even in the most rudimentary ATS workstation, and computer scientists simply do not know exactly what will happen on critical dates. The infrastructure that provides you with electricity and telecommunications could be impacted by Y2K, and chances are that neighboring states in your region will also experience random and possibly even widespread ATS shutdown. Contingency planning for Y2K presents its own particular set of concerns. the scope of which is beyond our existing procedures. So plans have to be adjusted on an international scale. Working together, we can manage our way through even the worst-case Y2K scenario. Imagine being lost, driving off the road, and getting a flat tire in the middle of nowhere, all at the same time. Then, a child entrusted to your care suddenly has a medical emergency. It is also dark, getting colder by the second, and the battery in your cellular phone is dead. What would you do? Did your contingency plan for this type of accumulation of problems? When lives are on the line, it had better. Luckily, our coach had the foresight to talk to each parent, so he knows how to help his top scorer through a difficult asthma attack. He also brought a spare battery for his phone. Thanks to good communication and innovative thinking, this potentially chaotic situation is well under control. Developing a Y2K contingency plan for your ATS network is no different. Just as our coach spoke to each parent to get key information about each child, you must become aware of the Y2K readiness of each neighboring state within your region. Civil aviation has always relied on cooperation between states. And more than any other industry, civil aviation will be impacted by the trans-border nature of the Y2K problem. That's why ICAO is urging all states to develop their plans within a regional framework. Through its regional offices, ICAO is working toward the development of effective Y2K contingency plans, and you should be working closely with ICAO in the development of these plans. However, before we discuss ICAO's main regional concerns, let's first take a brief look at what ATS managers are doing to make sure their contingency plans are up to the Y2K challenge. The work of Eurocontrol has been instrumental in rallying each of the 20 distinct ATC families of Europe. Getting several states together to discuss Y2K is in fact a challenge faced by many regions. Let us look at how ATS managers in Europe are planning to meet the Y2K challenge. As the year 2000 approaches, Europe could be presented with as many, if not more, ATC-related problems than the rest of the world. Unlike the United States, for example, whose ATC runs on a homogeneous series of networks and systems managed by a single organization, ATC in Europe relies on the numerous national ATC service providers, which are operating a series of different ATC systems. Each of these service providers is being encouraged to undertake detailed assessments for action and carry out the necessary measures with the aim of preventing any date-related ATC systems errors. It's time to react, and at the heart of coordinating the actions of all 37 member states of the European Civil Aviation Conference, ECAC, their service providers, and all of the information that passes between them, there is Eurocontrol. As a specialist dealing with a variety of different ATM and pre-ATC flight systems, Eurocontrol has become a natural focal point for ATC coordination. Eurocontrol's challenge? To go on ensuring continuous and safe ATC service throughout the transition into the next millennium. Starting with itself, Eurocontrol is having a very detailed look at its own systems and taking precautions in preparing its own operational contingency plans. Similarly, Eurocontrol encourages all ATC service providers to check their own systems. How complex are the problems? Well, let us just consider that Eurocontrol is coordinating all this. 20 interactive ATC systems with multiple national ATC service providers, involving 51 different systems for the ECAC area, using 17 different computer manufacturers with 13 different program languages. You can just begin to see the tip of the iceberg of potential hazards. It's clear that preparing for the approach of the new millennium is crucial. So what contingency plans are already in operation? And how exactly is Eurocontrol preparing for this challenge?
The CFMU is preparing for the year 2000 challenge in a number of ways. To provide safe and efficient air traffic services, all malfunctions based on technical grounds are ultimately covered by a series of technical and operational procedures. For instance, the CFMU has two sites, one here in Brussels and a second one in France near Paris, to cover for mission-critical operations. Operational contingency measures have been defined and are under constant review. For instance, CFMU has defined letters of agreements with its member states to provide manual flow management using the so-called minimum departure intervals for traffic flows at international airports. In parallel, tests and regression tests are being conducted well into the year 99. These and other measures will help the CFMU to reach its main objectives now and in the next millennium.
Eurocontrol has its own ATC operational center, the Maastricht Upper Air Control Center, which will have to provide safe and continuous ATC service in the upper airspace of 4 European states through the risk period.
Like in other centers, the Millennium problem gets our full attention. ATC data processing systems very often consist of more than 100 subsystems, each with their own hard and software, a lot of which is pre-1990 and therefore requires careful checking. Over the last 2 years, we have been finding and curing problems. At the moment, we have solved over 87% of the identified problems, and we will continue testing and repairing until the last bug has been cured. Every center, like ours, is only a small part in a vast and complex pan-European network. We must share the responsibilities. The weakest link in the ATM systems chain will define the overall efficiency of European air traffic in the millennium.
For the moment, everything is running smoothly. For this to continue to happen in the future, Eurocontrol is well aware that all of these ongoing preparations for the millennium must be carried out in minute detail. For this very reason, Eurocontrol has set up the Year 2000 Coordination Project. This project has been initiated by Eurocontrol and aims to help all ECAC states to work together to face the Year 2000 challenge. The Y2K Coordination Project is designed to create an awareness of the problems facing member states and to stress the need for status information exchanges. This project is geared to provide them with both guidance and support material in order to facilitate the development of cross-border contingency plans. Eurocontrol's Y2K Coordination Project aims to address potential risks to ATC system application software by encouraging exchange of information between participating parties. For this very reason, Eurocontrol organizes specific workshops to aid and encourage communication between member states, other states, and international organizations such as IATA and ICAO.
Eurocontrol is the European organization for the safety of air navigation. Safety is not the only reason for our existence, it is our overriding priority. Anything that can affect the safety of air traffic, we take very seriously indeed. We have in the organization a wealth of in-depth expertise, knowledge, so we have built up an impressive battery of solutions which can be applied to millennium problems. We developed guidelines and programs to combat possible bugs. So we are committed to detailed cross-border, cross-continent planning to iron out any difficulty before it arises. We have worked in cooperation with our international partners, other international organizations, national European air traffic service providers, our own member states. Together, we have addressed the millennium bug problem, and we can assure passengers that we have taken every precaution to ensure their safety now as well as in the year 2000.
In cooperation with ICAO, the International Air Transport Association, IATA, has developed a standard methodology to assess year 2000 readiness. The goal is to ensure safety and business continuity with minimum impact on infrastructure capacity. IATA wants to reassure the airlines that ATS providers are taking the necessary measures to ensure safety and minimize disruption through the millennium change.
Well, the airline industry has been working on the Y2K issue for a number of years now. In fact, the airlines have invested heavily in making sure that their systems are going to be ready for the new millennium. But aviation is a system, and the airlines are reliant on people like the airports, the ATS providers. And so it's terribly important that the whole system be ready for the millennium with all the problems that we know are out there. The members of IATA launched a program to try and increase the awareness of the Y2K problem with airports and air traffic service providers, and also to provide some common tools so that we can judge just how much progress we're making towards getting prepared for the new millennium. And in this work, the overriding goal is safety. And at the same time, we want to make sure that as we come towards the new millennium, we'll have maximum business continuity and minimize the disruption to the system capacity. Contingency planning is an essential part of any Y2K program, and aviation is really no exception to this. But it's going to be a complex job and an extensive one. We're not talking about a single component of the aviation system, of the ATS system, nor are we talking about a single FIR. It's the system as a whole. And that's why it's so terribly important that all of the players get involved in this contingency planning work. Operators, states, and ATS providers. And for our part, IATA is committed to work closely with all of those players to make sure that we have the right contingency plans in place to take aviation into the new millennium safely.
As we mentioned earlier, through its network of regional planning groups, ICAO will assist you in addressing 3 general areas. First, we need to ensure that all states within each region are fully aware of existing contingency planning procedures. Then we must prepare for catastrophic failures by ensuring that strategic ATS routes remain open. Finally, we will work at establishing regional crisis management teams. Being aware means reviewing your contingency plans and making sure that all staff reporting to you are also aware of the status of your plan. You must also be familiar with the strength and weakness of contingency plans for other states within your region. Complete closure of an airspace could have serious results. That is why the primary objective of any Y2K regional plan will be to ensure that strategic international routes remain open under all circumstances. Together, we will establish contingency communication and navigation services, as well as separation assurance procedures that are suitable to your region. On critical Y2K dates, it is possible that chaotic conditions could exist, and coordination between facilities could become confused. To address this, each ICAO region will consider establishing Y2K crisis management teams. The most likely location for such teams would be at existing air traffic flow management units. In the event of random and widespread failures, a central response team could help prevent disaster. You do not, however, have to wait for ICAO to begin creating a Y2K contingency plan, as there are many simple and formal steps you can take to prepare for critical date changes. Some of these include planning for the reestablishment of electricity at ATS facilities through agreements with local power companies or through the use of emergency generators. Do you, for example, have letters of agreement with neighboring ATS authorities that cover the use of emergency radio communication using HF? What about your local telecommunication providers? Do you have agreements with them on procedures in the event of communication failure? Are you ready to reroute important AFTN messages when a circuit is lost? In the event of a Y2K-related radar system failure, your air traffic controller should revert to non-radar control methods. ATS personnel and aircraft operators should also be familiar with ICAO's procedures for air navigation services and regional supplementary procedures in the event of lost communications. States must ensure that their registered aircraft operators are prepared to fly in a non-radar ATC environment. In summary, is your ATS staff aware of all existing plans, agreements, and procedures? Have they been briefed and trained to implement any contingency procedures that already exist? Start scheduling now so that adequate staff will be on duty before and after critical dates. Check your emergency power supplies to be sure they're in working order, and review Y2K procedures with your local power and telecommunications providers. Finally, if you can, supervise rehearsals for different Y2K problem scenarios. One final word. You may have already received the standard Year 2000 assessment criteria that was developed by ICAO in follow-up of Assembly Resolution A32-10. You should use that assessment criteria to check your systems for Y2K compliance, and then use the results as the basis for the publication of aeronautical information. It is in your best interest, therefore, to ensure the timely publication of the appropriate aeronautical information by no later than 1 July 1999, in accordance with Assembly Resolution A32-10.
We are optimistically and rapidly approaching the new millennium. We have high hopes and expectations for international civil aviation. I would therefore like to encourage you in the strongest possible terms to continue to prepare your air traffic and supporting systems to work smoothly into the year 2000. But also prepare yourself well for less than optimum circumstances. You can do this by preparing for all contingencies. I wish you good luck, and I look forward to a successful new millennium for international civil aviation.
So, you won the tournament in double overtime. You must have had a good game plan. And just as happy as these parents are to see that you brought home a trophy, they're even more thrilled that their children are back safe and sound. Coach, congratulations on a job well done and well planned. Obviously, good planning brings winning results.